Hi, Megan Dean, Director of Education with the Fork Conservancy. Today we're here at North Star Nature Preserve to take you on a trip down the river. One of the things that we're really focused on in this nature preserve is keeping this area safe and an area that protects habitat for our local animals. At the entrance of the preserve, you can see here that some of the species, some of the animals that utilize this area are great blue herons, osprey, golden eagles, moose, elk, beaver, and of course our beautiful trout. One of the things that we really want to draw your attention to are moose. Moose are beautiful, majestic animals, but they are also very dangerous and unpredictable. If you encounter a moose on the preserve, which it is very likely that you might, moose will respond aggressively to dogs. So dogs are not allowed on the preserve. Make sure that you paddle to the side and wait for the moose to leave. Don't try to float alongside of the moose because they could charge you. If a moose reacts to your presence and you're too close, try to at least give yourself a distance of 100 yards between you and the moose. If the moose charges, run away as fast as possible and hide behind a large tree or rock. For real, run, because you'll lose. You are responsible for your own safety, and these are not zoo animals, they're wild animals, and this is their home. So please respect them and keep yourself safe and stay away from all of the wild animals on the preserve. Make sure that you do not anchor and stop on land because that will disturb them and make them act aggressively towards you. Our mission at Fork Conservancy is to help people value, explore, and protect the rivers and the creeks in our watershed. So come on, let's go get started. So North Star Preserve has a really interesting history. It has a long history. It started out being created by glaciers. And then when the glaciers receded, what was left in the valley floor was a meandering river that hosted abundant wetlands. The first people to enjoy this area were the Ute Indians. Around the 1900s is when Aspenites started to explore this area. They had resorts, they had cabins, they had bands, and in true mountain fashion, they even had the resiliency to bring in a steamboat and literally had people enjoying a ride on a steamboat through the preserve. Now that is not allowed anymore, but that at one time did happen. In the 1940s, James Smith bought this land. He turned it into his family ranch and he cleared a lot of the vegetation and created hayfields. He loved this area and fought hard to protect it. 2 different times, 2 major dams were proposed for this area, which would have flooded and submerged all of the lands in this valley. He went as far as lobbying in Washington to get that stopped. There was another period of time where 1,500 homes were proposed, and that again was stopped. This place has had a tumultuous history, one that people have come together and worked really hard to save and preserve. In 1977, the Nature Conservancy bought the land and they were able to put it under conservation. So it was forever protected. In 1990, Pitkin County Open Space and Trails assumed the practice of protecting and managing this beautiful space. So we can all enjoy it today. Fork Conservancy works really hard to protect the rivers and the creeks and the streams in our Roaring Fork watershed. This map is a beautiful illustration that shows all of the water that flows from the high peaks that surround our gorgeous valley down into the valley and eventually into the Roaring Fork River, which drains into Glenwood Springs. North Star is at the tippy top of our watershed and originates from the headwaters that are a little farther upstream up on Independence Pass. As we go down the river, we're going to be really respectful of the animals that call this place their home, the residents that have property along the banks, and we're going to have an awesome trip. There's a mallard duck, one of the birds native to this area. And as you can see, he's feeding on some of the aquatic plants that are growing underneath the water. It's one of the amazing things that wetlands provide. They provide this ample food source for waterfowl and for birds. And the fact that he is not overly disturbed, he feels really comfortable just hanging out, having his lunch, and enjoying his day on North Star Preserve. Whoop, there he goes.
I'm going to talk in metaphors. A sponge is like a wetland because it absorbs pollution and stores water. And in the dry season, it releases water and recharges the river.
So another fun metaphor in wetlands are nurseries. So wetlands, and especially North Star, is like a nursery because it provides ample space and a safe space for animals to have their babies. So a lot of waterfowl lay their eggs here. Elk do their migration and mating here, and all the tree cover and shelter really gives the animals a nice safe place to increase their numbers. So we've pulled our boards up on the beach. This is a great spot to take a little rest. You can also access this from 82 as you're driving by. Most areas along the preserve, almost all areas, are not to be anchored to. Getting off your board really disrupts the wildlife and damages the fragile plant communities that are trying to reestablish. But this is a great spot to take a little rest and look around. So in front of you see a beaver lodge. Beavers use this area as their home. So they have sub-water entrances that they swim into, and that's where they feel safe. And beavers are an integral part of the wetland. They actually help create and slow down the water flow, and that allows the recharge to happen. So they're a wonderful asset to the environment, and this area gives them a great habitat to live and thrive. Okay, this is the takeout. Really important you don't miss it. The river past this point gets really dangerous, and there's some drops and some very rocky areas. So make sure that you take out here. The bridge is a really easy thing to spot. There's two dippers right there. Dee Dee the dipper looking for her breakfast or her lunch. She's doing her little dipper dance. So the American river dipper is an aquatic songbird that is the mascot of the Fork Conservancy. The beautiful thing about the river dipper is that they survive on eating macroinvertebrates. And the mayflies, caddisflies, and stoneflies that make up the primary bulk of their diet can only live in healthy rivers and streams. They're very fragile, so pollution and unhealthy conditions can harm them and wipe them out pretty quickly. We love to see the dipper flying and bouncing and dipping along our banks because it means that we have healthy rivers and streams. Thanks for joining us on our trip down the Roaring Fork River at North Star Nature Preserve. Get out, play, and protect our watersheds.